Hey folks, it's Tom, your Frugal Prepper. I'm out here working on this 07 Lucerne. So this is kind of an after the fact intro. When I first started with this, I didn't think it was going to be that exciting of a problem. So this Lucerne symptom was quits running, stalls, and then pull over, and most of the time it's no crank, no start with a click. And sometimes, like, you know, the Bendix is trying to engage, but the starter won't turn, kind of click. And most of the time, that's what happens. But sometimes it will crank, but is still no start. And so when I first pulled the history, I saw a crankshaft position sensor, and the history wasn't active. And then I got to looking. I was checking all the grounds, fuses, fuel pressure, you know, all the common stuff, and just going through all the wiring and visually inspecting it. A lot of it had some chafed wiring harness, protective loom, but the wires were fine. I replaced some loom, cleaned some things up, just kind of looking through everything. Didn't find anything. Everything looked clean and tight, except for when I did a voltage drop test. I started seeing voltage drop going as high as 2.9 volts between the engine and the body, and I'm like, uh-oh. So the ground looked clean, but when I actually pulled it out, there was a lot of corrosion around the center of the bolts, both on the motor and up on the chassis, on that main ground. I cleaned that all up real good, put some dielectric gel around it, bolted it all back up, and I think the voltage drop completely went away. Like, even under crank, while it's cranking, it'll drop like about a half a volt, maybe 0.6 volts. So that's awesome. So I'm thinking that's probably all it was. That ground was making the crankshaft position. All the sensors go goofy. Buzz was making it not start. Well, that's why it was clicking, but it didn't have enough current to actually get, you know, the thing to crank. Taking it for a test drive, and the tachometer stops working. And I pull back in the driveway with the tachometer not working. Plug in the scan tool, and I get an active crankshaft position sensor code. So that's where this video is going to start. So that's all the history. Now you can see what happens from there forward. Enjoy. Alright, so here I took this Buick for a test drive, and went to take off from a light. I was taking for a nice long test drive. I was about to wrap it up and call it quits, and it just hesitated. It didn't have full power taking off from the light, you know. And I was like, that's kind of weird. And then I looked at the tach, and no tach symbol, no tachometer. So then I hurried up, got back here, hooked up the scan tool. And you can see in my global ODB2, I now have a pending code for a crankshaft position sensor. And so before, when I scanned this when I first got it, I had a history code only under OEM data for crankshaft position. I had nothing in global ODB2 for crankshaft position. But now let me go ahead and go to OEM data. And so I'm like, well, crankshaft position sensor, that's a current code. And I'm like, Now the other code that just showed up that I did not have before was, or is, in the history, starter relay control circuit. I think we got two separate problems going on here. I think we got a starter relay problem and a crankshaft position sensor problem. You know, like I said, I've inspected all the wiring and everything. It's odd. I don't know. You know, a crankshaft position sensor would definitely cause a stall. See, the tachometer's not working, but it should not stop it from starting. So while I've got that, I'm going to go ahead and just shut this off and restart it here and see what happens. I want to see first, if I go here and I go back to my global ODB2, I should be able to see my you know, snapshot thing or whatever, if it's got one. I don't know if I got one present. See, that's the auto link. And if I go menu, what's under system test? There's nothing good there. Somewhere there's a way to view that stored data. I think since the code's still pending, it's not going to give me any of that data. However, it's interesting when I do go here to live data. I'm seeing a calculated load of 25%. You wouldn't think it'd be sitting at 25% idling in park. But my engine RPM is reading on here. But that may be estimating it, or it may be coming from the crankshaft position sensor. I'm assuming this one has one. I mean, it's still running, right? So, if it's running, will it start right now with the tach not working? Yep, it's starting. The ignition switch is sticky, but I have jiggled and played, and it does not make the car stop running or not start or anything. Oh, I was jiggling with that ignition switch, and all of a sudden my RPMs came back. Okay, I got RPMs again now. Let me see if I jiggle it, if it'll go away again. Now they're there. How odd. I'm just gonna keep playing with the sucker here, and now let's see what that calculated load reads with the can we get the calculated load? Engine RPM 769. It still reads about the same. It's still working. That's really something. So I don't know if it just started working again, or if it's something to do with me jiggling this ignition. I need to go pull up a wiring diagram and see what in the ignition could have anything to do with the RPM and or crankshaft position sensor. So let's see if I go ahead and reconnect, if there's current code still in the there's still a pending one for crankshaft position sensor. Let me go down here to special Buick OEM enhanced. That's still in history. Crankshaft position sensor circuit. It now says FSC instead of current. So I don't know what FSC stands for. I only get that status under OEM enhanced. I'll have to Google that crap. This is history OFC, and this just says FSC. Let me stop it. Let me turn it off and on a few more times. Because I mean, I went through all the wiring I could have visually inspect on this guy, just to see. I know that ignition seems to stick when you go to turn the key. I wonder if we shouldn't put ignition in this the way it sticks. And it comes, I mean, it really doesn't take much force at all to really bump it out. There's kind of a halfway. Here comes the car. Doesn't take much force. Okay, here's the fuel pump prime. I can't get the tachometer to stop working now. I mean, I inspected all the wiring is, it looks pretty good going to the crankshaft position sensor. So I don't think there's a problem out there at the sensor. I mean, unless it's just an intermittently bad sensor. I guess I need to reconnect this real quick. It's not a current code now. It's just history in the OEM. And let's see if in the global OBD2. If we've got, it still says pending there. Interesting. So it's still a pending code in global OBD2. I wonder if I reconnect on global OBD2, if it maybe it's. Oh, so now it's still pending. So. Interesting. And the tach's still working. I just don't know that there's much else I can tell from the scan tool. I could go back here and do an all module scan and see if there's anything in any of the other modules. Brake control module, electronic suspension, body control, climate control seat module. That one takes a while. Maybe the climate control seat module is not responding. I think it's working though, because I think my butt's warm. I need a Buick Lucerne, man. This is a nice car. Memory seat module, park assist module. Still talking to the PAM. Alright. The PDS, passenger door switch, passenger presence, radio. Talking to the radio, remote control door lock receiver, supplemental inflatable restraints, theft deterrent, vehicle communication interface. Alright, let's see. So I got the two DTCs and the powertrain control module that we already saw. There's nothing in electronic brake. Oh, there's two in electronic suspension control. Oh, I know what that is. Yeah. That's because I had the relay out. So I had the relay out for the air pump. I think that's what that was. Compressor relay circuit. Look at this. Lost communications with ECM. That's important. Body control module has nothing. Digital radio receiver, nothing. HVAC, nothing. Passenger door switch, nothing. Supplemental inflatable restraint has 2. Control module ignition on and start circuit low voltage open. How interesting. The ignition was on and the start circuit had a low voltage, or was open. Okay. Except the turret module has nothing. I'm just wondering if this thing's got a bad ignition switch. Especially since it started working when I was playing with the key for the tachometer, and then we were having start circuit problems. I want to see if there's anything that the tachometer and the crankshaft position sensor would have to do with the ignition. So let me go pull up some wiring diagrams. Okay, so what I'm going to do is go ahead and measure the crankshaft position sensor. The way we get to this is on the ignition coil pack. It's kind of hard to see down in here because there's this radiator cover in my way. But the first 2 wires on either side of that bolt is your 18X and your 3X crankshaft sensor signal. So Scanner Danner has an awesome video on testing these. This is where I learned how to do it. So I will put a link to that down below. But I got those run around here to my oscilloscope module and hooked up to my laptop. So what I'm going to do is start it. This should be a 7-volt pull down signal. We should see like a 7-volt spread on these, and then I want to see how strong the signal is, how much is pulling it down. It's normally high at 7. It should pull it down to 0. And does it continue to pull it down to 0? Is there any intermittent? Does it get worse as the engine gets hot? So we'll see what happens here. I'm going to go ahead and start it up. Okay, so this does not look like a correct signal. This is definitely my 3X signal. You see the 3 different size square waves. But I'm not getting anything good here. I mean, I'll go down here. We'll change the timing on this one maybe a little. Well, that's interesting. I'm not getting any signal out of the 18X side. So the connector looks okay to me. I guess I could probably take that off and try to ohm it out and stuff. I'm just going to first double check here real quick, make sure I got the right wires. Okay, so I was able to go ahead and go down here and get this connector unplugged. And then when I measured it, I got 7 volts. So it told me I'm getting voltage down to the sensor, which means it had to be my back probe. So I redid my back probe a little bit and got it down in there a little more. As you can see with the ignition on, now we're getting our 6.6 volts, 7 volts there, and we're getting, that's on the 18X side, and then we're getting that same voltage over here on the 3X side. So now we can check and see what kind of signal we're getting on the scope again. I gotta get this sensor plugged back in. It's not an easy one to get to. So let's see what our voltage is here. Max voltage 6.7, 6.8, 6.7, 6.8. So now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to let this run for a while and warm up and see if those voltages come down or if anything drops out. Alright, well, it's been about a half an hour. The tack has not quit working. I've tried different RPMs, holding the idle up a little. I mean, I'm tempted to call it because I know that the wiring's good. You know, that connector looks clean, and I know that I got you know, the tach stopped working on the drive, and at that point I saw a current code under OEM data for the crankshaft position sensor, and as soon as the tach started working, that code went from current FSC under OEM data. So I would love to see which of these signals disappear. So my understanding is that the 18X signal, after it hands, after it comes out of bypass and hands the ignition control to the PCM after a start, the 3X signal is not really needed. It does everything for its normal driving and drivability off of the 18X signal. How much do you want to bet that the 3X signal, however, drives the tach? But the question is, if that 3X signal was bad, it needs that signal to start. It can't start without that. At least that's my understanding from reading. I don't know. Maybe the tach signal does come from the 18X and that's what it's losing, and the computer can fall back to the 3X signal if it loses the 18X. That's also a possibility. I know that it can start with just the 3X signal without the 18X, so that would be the only thing that would make sense, is that the 18X signal is intermittent sometimes. Considering we know the wiring's good and everything looks fine and there's no corrosion, I'm tempted to go ahead and call a sensor and replace it. I'll see tomorrow if I want to drive this thing around some more and see if I can get it to do it while I see if I can get some readings on it while the tach quits working, if I can get it to quit working again. Anyway, I'm going to go in for tonight, and I'll talk to y'all later. Okay, so I've got everything set up here. We're going to go take this guy for a drive and see if we lose any of these signals here, and see if the tach quits working. For right now, the tachometer is working. And then I'm also going to hook up my scan tool down here before we leave, and we'll see when the tach quits working, if we get the code and what the signal looks like. We're still out driving it. It's been about 15 minutes or so. I just had to stop and get a couple gallons of gas because it didn't have much gas in it when it was brought to me. I'm going to take it, for another 10 minutes or so here, and if it doesn't do it, we're just going to call it a crankshaft position sensor and replace it. But the tach's still working. We'll see what happens here. Alright, well, as hard as I try, I cannot get it to reproduce the issue of the tach not working, and the signal's been fine the whole time. The tach's working fine. I'm just not going to have any luck reproducing it. It's, it's an intermittent fault. It happens when it happens. I am glad, though, that it happened on the test drive the other day. I was able to see with the tach not working, I got an active crankshaft position sensor code. As soon as the tach stopped working, I did a reconnect on the tool. It went from that active state to the FSC state, which I'm not sure what the FSC means exactly, but it seems like they'll go active, then they'll be in FSC for a while, and then they go history. So I'm just going to look, make sure this code hasn't come back to a history code yet. Let me just rescan the OEM enhanced, and it's still in that FSC, which is not like it's actively bad. When there's an active code, there's active, and then when something hasn't happened for a long time, it does say history. But I'm still getting a signal, and I still got a tach. But since I did see it be active and then not active, I have to say that's a crankshaft position sensor. I've investigated all the wiring. What I really wanted to see is which signal I lost, and if the signal stayed high or low when it went away, or even more interesting, if it just really wasn't pulling it down as much. Maybe it started pulling it down 5 volts or 4 volts instead of the whole 7 volts. Oh well, it is what it is. It's raining. I'm hoping the rain will die down and we'll get out here and get this new sensor put on. I went ahead and got a Wells sensor for it, and we'll see what happens. Alright, I'm going to try to get this done here in between downpours. It's quit raining. It's supposed to stay quit for an hour or so. We'll see if we can get this done. Gotta take this serpentine belt off first. Come on, just. Okay, alright. That's loose. Now let's go down below. I've already got it opened up down there. Okay, so here's our harmonic balancer. I just gotta get this bolt out of here, and we gotta get the removal tool for it. Let me take the extension off, see if it'll break it. If not, we'll have to go air powered. This should be moving it off. Alright. Alright, let me get the air impact. Let me see if I got air pressure. Seems a little weak. Does this feel a little loose though? Not much. It's little. Just right with the pressure all the way up. There we go. Amazing what an extra 30 pounds can do. It's all oily. Wonder if that front main seal's leaking. Okay, so now I gotta get tool out here to get to this guy and pull it out. I can see all three little ridges. I have a little tool that's got the hooks. Just hook in there and pull that out. Alright, well, I got a little problem. My harmonic balancer tool, the little hooks are not small enough to reach down in here and hook in. I'd have to get a different kind of tool. If they were small enough, though, I think you could flip these hooks over and you could hook all three of these. Like so. I don't know. This isn't a real expensive puller tool. I think what I'm going to do is grind these hooks down, get them to fit in here, see if I can pull that sucker out. The question I have is, if I get this all say down in here, do I have enough room then with these hooks standing up and hooked down in here to pull? And it doesn't leave me much room to pull. It's right up against the frame once it's hooked in there. So I don't even know that that's going to work. So I have to figure out what kind of tool I need to do this darn thing. Alright, hang on. Okay, so here's what I was able to work out. So at the bottom, down in here, through these little slots, there are bolt holes. They are some weird size. I just dug through my big thing of bolts till I found some that fit. It's like a really fine threaded, I don't know if it's standard or metric, honestly. But hey, at this point, if it works, I'll take it. It's a bolt like that one, and it's just like, it's a real fine threaded. And this isn't, let's see if this is metric or not. So a metric hardness marking. It's got some weird plus sign on it. I don't even know. So I guess all I can say is, if you're doing this, have fun finding the bolts, the bolt sizes. You might have to make some trips to the hardware store if you don't have a big collection. So now we'll just go ahead and the other thing I did is I put my my shortest little rod down in there inside before I screwed the screw in. So that rod is against this forcing screw to the crank. So now we're just gonna see if we can get it to come off. Alright, I'm gonna move the camera out of the way and get this done, hopefully. So far, so good. There she comes. I'm gonna have to back this off. Come on, baby. Wow. There she is. Alright, and right there, right here is our crankshaft position sensor. So we gotta get this little cover thing loose. So there's a couple bolts or something there. Yeah, that front main seal is leaking just a hair. You can kind of see where, just a hair. Anyway, well, no, it's not really leaking because it's not wet down here. That's just the crankshaft's a little wet, which I would expect that. Okay, so we're just gonna get this sensor on out of here. We'll inspect all this wiring while we're under here, just to make sure. What's that? Is there cutting that wire? That's our yellow wire. Alright, we'll inspect that connector real good while we're under here. But, sweet. I got access. I'm ready to get some stuff done now. Alright, so my old sensor here is out. I got my new sensor going in. It's starting to rain, so I'm just going to kind of let you guys watch and get this done. It's got this little hole right here in the middle with this pin. It's going to kind of line up on that. Very carefully make sure it seats all the way down there. It does. And then we'll tighten the bolts in. I don't want to tighten the bolts till I know it's seated, because I don't want it to crack on that pin if it don't go in. These wires all look pretty good and intact. I might put another little piece of wire loom on that while I'm down here, but that's all fine. Okay, so get this wrenched in here. Top one. Okay, now let me see if I can tighten her up. Okay, look at this one. Don't have to be like gorilla tight, I just want it good and snug. Okay, that's good now. We'll just connect her back. And this cover just slides down on these bolts. These 3 spots. Make sure she's all the way back. Then our connector plugs in right here. Set that back there. There's not a better time to put a little piece of wire loom around these wires to protect them, so I'm going to go ahead and do that. Okay, there, that's good. Alright, now the harmonic balancer goes back on. I don't know if this has, I'm sure this has a keyway. Let me figure out where that key is. I don't see it down here. Oh, it's like right at the very top there. Okay. There it is. Okay, what I like to do is get something and hit this home. I do not like to use the force harmonic balancers in, because you do not want to risk snapping that crankshaft bolt off. Oh, it's really starting to rain. I gotta move tools under the car here. Alright. I'm just gonna put this socket and extension up here and just hammer it home. If I can get the reach. There we go. As far as I can get her to go, we'll go ahead and be gentle with it. Alright, she's home. There we go. Sweet. Alright, I'm going to start cleaning some stuff up here. Okay, so the crankshaft position sensor is in. It starts and runs. Tack works. But of course it was intermittent, so it did that before. Got water all over my glasses. It started raining, and as soon as I got it done and drug all my tools back in here, it stopped again. So here's my thought. So when I had the background, I was seeing a significant voltage drop as well. When I cleaned the background, that voltage drop went away. I didn't get that part on camera. I thought, it's a dirty ground, no big deal, nothing to do a video on. And so my thought is that thing is heating up and getting good and warm on a long drive probably, and that the transistor goes bad in the crankshaft position sensor, holds the signal low or fails to pull it low anymore, and you get tack stop working. If it gets bad enough, then you lose your other signal, right? So then it stops running altogether. My thought is that the bad ground was probably exacerbating that issue, right? So if it's starting not to pull it low enough, right, and you've got a voltage drop differential between the engine and the body because the ground's iffy, then that could exacerbate the issue. That could also cause the click but no start, right? Not a good enough ground there. I can tell you when I cleaned the ground, it's cranked a lot faster. And now even when it's cranking, there's a half a voltage drop as opposed to 2.5 to 2.9 volts of drop under normal running. However, we still had the issue where the tack stopped working. I think we also had a bad crankshaft position sensor. I think it was just exacerbated by a bad ground. It was causing a stall when the ground would get really bad. Then it wouldn't restart. But sometimes when it would still crank, that was just the crankshaft position sensor crapping out. That's my theory at this point, as best as I can tell with the information I have. So we put a crankshaft position sensor on it. We cleaned the ground. We're going to see if it still happens. We're going to see if anything's still wrong. Anyway, I'll talk to y'all later. This is Tom, your Frugal Prepper.